All right, guys, we're going to welcome back to the Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our preview and prediction for the 2023 MAC Championship game. Toledo 7.5-point favorites, totals 44, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN from Ford Field in Detroit. Looking at the RedHawks offense, this is a unit so far this season that's been pretty sound at 27 points per game, but there's plenty of things unraveling for the RedHawks that need to be attended to. The last couple of games, they've significantly struggled. They've not been able to post more than 350 yards much since September. They only did that one time. And now they're down to a backup quarterback in Avion Smith. He had to play a good bit last season, 219 pass attempts. Brett Gabbert with a leg injury, done for the season after 8 pretty solid games. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks through the air, 52% completion rating, a $181 rushing, and a touchdown. This is a guy that certainly is going to look to get his legs involved as much as possible. 3 straight games for him of double-figure carries, and then only 6 carries for 8 yards against Ball State. He was just not effective at all. I anticipate, once again, though, he's going to get double-figure carries, Nick. They certainly need to scheme that up because that's going to be their only shot at winning. It seems like this passing attack is going to be incredibly limited in this game, especially if their top wide receiver, Gage Larvardin, cannot get the go.
With Gage Lavardin being questionable, it certainly poses a problem for the RedHawks here. And with their quarterbacks, Gabbert being out, that's even more of a problem. Smith, not a bad runner, but just not very good as a pocket passer. Like you said, the 50% completion percentage, below 600 yards passing, his limited appearances, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Really, it's going to come on the ground. They do have some nice weapons. Lavardian is a solid weapon when he is playing. 625, 17.4, and 6 touchdowns when he was at full health. He's been questionable for a couple weeks now. Definitely a tough loss for this team. Outside of that, they do have some decent weapons, just no one that really screams at you. Cade McDonald, 3 touchdowns, 339, 13.0 yards per catch, and then Javon Tracy, 15.8, 2 touchdowns, 348 for him. I just don't really know if they're going to be able to throw the ball a whole lot here. I think it's going to be a very stagnant passing attack given the troubles at quarterback, which means they're going to rely on the run. They're going to rely on these backs to help them out. They average 4.39 yards per attempt on the ground. That number is going to have to be very high against Toledo if they want to have success.
Yeah, and that's also a pretty inflated number. They had over 10 yards per carry against Delaware State. So if you take that out, it's obviously going to be significantly lower. In conference, it's about 3.6. And, I figured the rushing attempts would go up significantly with Gabbert being out, and they certainly did for a couple of weeks. Only 24 attempts for 46 yards against Ball State. They do have a pretty good run defense in the MAC conference, but this is still atrocious because they already have one of the nation's worst downfield passing attacks, and now it gets even worse. So this rushing attack is going to definitely lean on Smith. Kenny Tracy as well. Most importantly, Rashad Amos, 821 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's been a productive back this season. Good news for Miami is the offensive line has a really good size. Everyone's about 6'6", 300 plus. Tackles have been very good. The interior offensive line, not as stout for Miami. Will Jados, though, he's been really good at his left tackle spot. And then when you glance over to right tackle, and Reed Holsky, it's also pretty sound. Again, the interior is not as good. We're going up against a really good Toledo front here, Nick. This was pretty awful what they were able to do, though, against Ball State, which was pretty much nothing. Smith had 2 interceptions. They did generate 170 passing yards, but only 46 on the ground. It's their 3rd time in the last 6 games where they've been held to under 100 yards rushing. The efficiency and the effectiveness certainly went down. They've been able to win all these games, though. 4-game winning streak coming into this one, but this offense continues to regress, and now they're playing arguably the best defense in the conference. What overall is the expectation? Because they got to be able to stay on the field. 1 for 9 on 3rd down in this last game, and over the last month since Gabbert's injury, they've been awful. They did lose to Toledo at home by only 4. That was their last loss, but that was much different complexion with Gabbert being healthy. Again, he hasn't been since, and they've just been awful in all areas, really.
1 of 9 on 3rd down is not going to cut it against a caliber team like Toledo that can score and play good defense. I have to give credit to this Miami team for being at where they are, where they have had such a solid season so far. A very nice record. The 2 losses only this season, 10-2 overall, 7-1 in the conference. Their only loss coming to, and obviously a Power 5 ACC team in Miami, Florida, in the Battle of Miamis, and then, losing to Toledo, like you said, a few weeks ago, which, Toledo, obviously a very good team in their own right, losing at home to Toledo. That is, Toledo, because they're in this conference title game as well. They're 8-0 in the conference. It's going to rely on Amos a lot. He's going to have to be the guy to carry the load. 821 yards, 5.1 and 10 scores. He's going to be the guy they rely on at this point. Kenny Tracy will get some carries as well, but it's going to be a tough road uphill for this Miami offense. One thing that is important, though, if it does get down to defensive battle, their kicker is 100% on field goal attempts and is 100% on PATs if you do not count blocked PATs. If you count blocked PATs, he only has one miss. So he has a great ratio for the kicker. So if it comes down to a defensive battle where field goals are the one that gets the job done, like it was against Ball State this past weekend, that could be very helpful for Miami Ohio because they do have a lights-out kicker. Outside of that, though, this offense, I'm not very confident in their ability to put up points against a very stingy Toledo defense.
Graham Nicholson, a flawless kicker this season. Looking at the Toledo offense, this is a unit putting up 35 points per game. They have a lot of veterans on this side of the ball. They've also had some really impressive games. They had the second half comeback against Bowling Green, 500 plus yards the game prior. They had balance, but they only put up 318 in the first matchup with the RedHawks. They only have one loss this year, and it came in a game against Illinois where they were up, I think, double figures at one point, and they really should have won the game against what ended up being a disappointing Fighting Illinois team. Toledo very sound, though, led by Daquan Finn, who's really progressed as a passer, up to a 65% completion rating, 2,384 yards, 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. I remember watching him, in the Bahamas Bowl, I think it was 2 years ago, where this guy just wanted to take off and run back in 2021. And, that he seemed very uncomfortable in the pocket, and he's really focused on improving in that area. 6 touchdowns rushing for him, 530. So that's certainly still a big part of his game, while showcasing those, mentioned improvements to his passing game. The Detroit native, Nick, he's looking to have a great coming out party here in front of his home crowd.
Daquan Finn playing in front of a home crowd at Ford Field. I think this is a great matchup for him. I like what Finn can do here. He's more polished the passer, like you said, was really unpolished in the past in previous seasons. Now he's got the passing a little more under control. 65% comp rate is solid. 2,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. Good numbers out of Finn. I really like what I've seen in him. And he is that dual threat still. While his passing is more polished, he still is a true dual threat with the 6 touchdowns and the 530 on the ground, 4.8 yards per carry. So I like the way they have the balance. I think this is a very balanced rushing and passing attack. They have a really nice mixture. They can really hit you in a couple different ways here. This offense, 35.3 points per game. They've been competitive and they've blown out a couple teams. They've had a lot of high-scoring affairs throughout the season. They probably should have beat Illinois week 1, like you said. They had a really good crack at the Fighting Illini. This is a very fun offense that has a great opportunity here to play against this Red Hawk defense. 6.6 yards of total offense per play for this team. Very nice averages there.
The Toledo rushing attack, 211 a game. Finn's been great. Jaquez Stewart, he gets about 10 carries per contest. He's got 459 and 5 scores. And then to cap things off, Penny Boone, 1,359 yards rushing, 15 scores, 7.5 yards per carry for him. It's obviously a great trio here with all the speed and the versatility they have. Biggest problem, though, is they only had a $158 on 46 attempts against Miami, Ohio in the first matchup. Gabbert might not be playing, Nick, but this defense is certainly up to the challenge of slowing these guys down and winning this game for them. Miami does a very good job at limiting big plays. This run defense is no joke. They've only allowed 2 carries this season of over 30-plus yards. That's tied with the likes of, Oregon State, Michigan, right up there with, guys like Georgia. That's some really good numbers for, them playing in this conference. That's 6th nationally. They certainly got to improve in that category, Nick, because, again, the defense is going to be fully healthy. There's no problems there.
This is certainly a top 10 defense that Miami has, so that is a tough matchup for this team, but they do have a nice amount of runners that can really get the job done. Penny Boone is a fantastic lead back, 1,300 yards on the ground, 7.4 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns, just whatever you want to see out of a MAC running back. This is what Boone can do. He is very talented. Jaquez Stewart is fantastic as well, 450, 4.7, and 5 scores for him. They have some other guys down the list, and we talked about Finn already. This is a very deep running back room, and like I said, they do have great balance in the passing attack as well. They have a nice, well-rounded wide receiving core, so if the run does face some issues against Miami, this team could certainly air it out with Finn under center and be able to find success.
Yeah, on the left side of this offensive line is phenomenal. Nick Rossi at left tackle, and then at guard, you have Vinny Scurry. He's one of the top pass blockers in the country. The rest of the unit not as polished, but that left side is certainly something they can lean on going into this game. And going against that Red Hawk defense, they've been very dominant in conference play, giving up less than 100 yards per contest in the phenomenal side of the ball for them. 274 they allowed against Ball State. That was very concerning going into this game. 36 against Akron, 50 against Ohio certainly shows you what they can do. They had a pretty good effort the first matchup against Toledo. This is a run defense that's been very sound this year. Again, they flat out dominated this conference, and that number is up to over 100 yards per game after a disappointing effort against Ball State. But for the most part, Nick, that's where they've been. Limiting big yards. They don't allow big plays. A lot of studs here on this side of the ball. Caden Woolard, Brian Ugwu, they both have 11 tackle for loss each. I love the linebackers and Matt Salopek and, Ty Wise as well. They've been productive. They've been good tacklers. They're all very sound against the run. This is a side of the ball that certainly is very, very underrated. A lot of people don't watch this conference, but you guys can play ball. It's fun to watch tough physical defenses, and they have a nice little bit of rotation here in their front seven.
They certainly have a very talented front seven that has some nice production ability here. I do really like what they have at linebacker. I think their linebacking core is a very underrated unit in this country. Matthew Slopek is just a fantastic leader. 125 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups, plus a pick. Ty Wise is also fantastic. 102 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, a pick, 4 pass breakups. Both linebackers over 100 tackles. Very nice production, physical production. Brian Ugu, like you said, 58 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. Caden Woolard, 11 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, 38 total tackles. Kobe Hilton, 21 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss as well. Great numbers across the board. This front seven is just a physical, hard-hitting unit that's going to try and stuff the run against a very talented Toledo rushing offense.
Yeah, the production from the linebackers is certainly highly impressive. The secondary's also been pretty elite. They had a pretty rough, month of September, and they've really bounced back since then. They've also been very stout in this conference, giving up only about 58 per game, only 4 touchdowns allowed through the air, 5 interceptions. So that's certainly some pretty outstanding numbers. Opponents have not been able to really do much on them. They held Toledo to only 160. They did give up 2 touchdowns though. So half the production they've allowed came to them right there. I think the biggest concerns are probably going to be on the field too much, because the inabilities for their own offense. In their secondary, though, at safety, Michael Dowell, he's been phenomenal. Eli Blakey, he's been terrific as well. Yazan McKee at cornerback. I think that these guys certainly have some of the abilities to slow down Toledo that doesn't have, the greatest of receiving rooms. I think it's certainly a more underrated unit. Some of the production they've gotten has been great from their top 2 players, but it's not great in terms of depth. So I certainly think if they could put these guys on the box, they could be in for a pretty good day. What's your assessment of the secondary that complements a great front seven?
I think this is a good secondary. Jaquez Warren, a good player with 59 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups. Michael Dow, a really nice physical player, very solid, 57 total tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 2 picks for him. McKee is very solid as well, 47 total tackles, 2 picks, 8 pass breakups. Eli Blakey is good as well with the 41 total tackles, a nice tackler. Renan Strader is a true freshman who has really stepped up at right cornerback. He's having a phenomenal season. 13 pass breakups, 53 total tackles for the true freshman Strader. It's just an incredible numbers and great production of a true freshman there in this conference. This is a very nice secondary unit. Like you said, complements a great front seven. This is a very solid defense, 16.3 points per game given up, 3.59 yards per attempt on the ground, 4.87 yards per play. Very nice numbers from this Miami defense.
Yeah, 29% third down conversion rate. Biggest problem here, though, for me, is they just faced the opponent in Ball State who has a great running back, and they also have that threat of the QB run. And they got gashed, 274. That is just a brutal mark there. I think Toledo's going to look to pull a little bit of that out of their playbook. Ball State really doesn't have much of a passing attack, while on the other hand, Toledo does have that balance, Nick, so I certainly think this is a bad omen for them coming into this contest where their own run game really struggled as well.
I agree with you. I think that's a fair assessment. If that they face difficulties running the ball on offense against the Toledo defense, they could find themselves behind the chains and behind the score very much throughout the entirety of the afternoon. If they cannot get points early on, the Toledo offense will be able to score on you very quickly. And if they fall behind, it could be very tough for that passing attack for Miami to try and get back into the game.
Yeah, I think Toledo, as look at their defense, certainly needs to be wary of that QB run themselves. And this is a team that's certainly been a little bit more vulnerable to the run. They're still not awful by any means. This is a really good unit, though. 333 per game allowed on terms of total defense. They also have some very productive players themselves. When you start with that defensive line, Judge Culpepper, 10 TFL for him at his defensive tackle position. Darius Alexander has been forceful. It's really about these linebackers, though. Terrence Taylor, DeAndre Reagan at their outside backing positions, Jeremiah Peters as well. And then I love what they have in terms of Dallas Gant in his middle linebacking position. This is a unit that also has, veteran disciplined football players. Daniel Bolden stepped up this year as the second leading tackler on this defense. I think the game plan is going to be simple for them. We'll get to that kind of more here in a second, but they have some nice edge rushers, Nick. The inside backers are also great run stoppers. I think, if it's going to be a one-dimensional offense, they could probably be a zero-dimensional offense because I really think they could get held in check significantly here. Toledo hasn't budged really all season long.
This is a very physical defense, 20.4 points per game, 3.88 yards per attempt on the ground. This is a nice front seven of this defense, front part of this defense that I really like. Dallas Gant is a great leader on this team, 97 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and a pick for him, plus a sack. Daniel Bolden, 80 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. Judge Culpepper, 35, 10 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks for him. Good numbers out of that guy. Terrence Taylor, 35 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Darius Alexander, 34 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups. I like DeAndre Reagan as well, 32 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Jeremiah Peters, his production in the backfield is fantastic, 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 22 total tackles. And Deshaun Holt's a nice rotational piece of 18, 4.5, and 3. Nice depth there. Holt adds a nice rotational piece at edge. You can kind of plug him in on the right side as a good depth piece overall. This is a very deep defensive line unit that has a nice secondary as well to complement them.
Yeah, the secondary, 52.3% opponent completion rating. That's a terrific number. Held Miami to 47% in the first meeting with a quarterback that certainly was better than the one they have now. Did give up 300 plus to Bowling Green. Locked up really good in the second half. And I think they're going to be close for business in this game. Quinyon Mitchell, one of the nation's top corners for a second straight year. He's flat out elite. That side of the field, don't even worry about it, especially if your top receiver is not going to play. Chris McDonald on the other side, he's been, an above average player, but more importantly, RJ Delancey, in his slot position, also when he plays outside corner, he's been a terrific ball player for them. Maxine Hook at his safety spot has been a really good player in all facets of his game. Emmanuel McNeil Warner, he's been an elite run defender, very sound tackler, and I think he's been pretty stout in coverage as well. This is a secondary that's forced 11 interceptions this year. Mitchell, his ball production is terrific. Hook didn't play in the last game, so you certainly want to monitor his availability in this one, but they certainly have Nate Bauer, another senior who can fill in admirably. This is a secondary, Nick. Don't even bother throwing against them. They don't even need to show up to the game. As long as they are focused in the back end, they're going to be phenomenal. And Mitchell's ball production for a second straight year is absurd, with a pick in 16 pass breakups. Again, don't even bother, because this is going to be a day off for them.
Don't even bother is the way to look at it. Absolutely. 109 passer rating for opponents, 11 interceptions, 12 touchdown ratio. Just a phenomenal unit. If Maxime Hook doesn't play, that's a tough loss rate. The 60 total tackles, 3 pass breakups, and 3 interceptions. But they have guys that can step up outside of Hook. I think it's fine. McNeil Warren, 55 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, 2 picks. Quinyon Mitchell, like you said, 38 total tackles, 16 pass breakups, 1 interception. Just ridiculous numbers out of him. Zach Ford, 4 pass breakups, 52 total tackles. Nate Bauer, 50 total tackles, 2 pass breakups, a pick. Good leader, Chris McDonald, 28 total tackles, 8 pass breakups, 2 picks there. 7 pass breakups for Ronald Delancey, 19 total tackles and interception. Just great numbers across the board. Good spread of production. Nice balance on the secondary unit. Miami's going to have absolutely no chance to throw the ball. If they even try to attempt it here, I think the ball could be picked off very quickly. They're going to find themselves some serious trouble trying to throw the ball.
Tail to tape the team comparisons. I think it's a clean sweep across the offense for Toledo. Definitely think offensive line might be the one spot where they can give them a run for their money. But wide receiver, guys like Jerron Newton, the brother of Johnny Newton that plays for Illinois, Junior Vander Ross, those two have been great, 500 plus yards each. A nice tight end, Anthony Torres, as well. D-line and linebacker, I'm going to go ahead and do mercy to the RedHawks and give them the edge there. I think you can certainly make a good argument for why they're getting the nod there. And then in the secondary, it's been Stroud for both sides. But I think Toledo's is better overall, and I think they certainly have the much easier matchup as well in this contest. Do you have much to disagree with?
I don't have much to disagree with at all. I think this makes a whole lot of sense here. I think this is a very easy list to look at comparing these two teams. Very obvious who has the edge. I think it's Toledo at this point.
Looking at the final thoughts and the prediction. Keys to the game, Miami, Ohio, they need to control the clock. Run game needs to be sound, and, must stop it yourself. That's going to be your best chance to win this game. Toledo just needs to execute with balance, stay ahead of the sticks, force them to throw. And I think it's exactly what's going to happen. This run game is going to get stopped. It's going to force them to throw against the secondary. We just said it's going to have no issues at all stopping the pass. And, I think they're certainly going to have the ball in terms of controlling the clock in their own right. Just Miami's going to be in a lot of third downs. They're not going to be able to convert. I think they have a very stout defense. And it's very evident with how the first game went. But there's a big problem here at quarterback for Miami. I think this is going to be a big cover opportunity for Toledo. I'd be significantly shocked if they can't get over that 7.5 point line. 27-13 final score for me. I think this is going to be too easy for the Toledo defense. And I think that threat that we saw last week, the ball stayed exposed. Toledo's going to take that right out of their playbook. I think they're going to copy. It's going to be a carbon copy, really, and they're going to be able to run away with this one.
I'm giving Toledo 31-20 win. I give Miami, Ohio a few garbage time points here to get to that 20 mark, but I think 11 points still easily covers the 7-point spread for Toledo. I like Toledo a whole lot. I think this is a very good team. I think they're in a very good spot here, 11-1 with their only loss being to a Power 5 team on the road. That's a pretty solid resume in my opinion, and that one loss was by 2 or 3 points. So a really solid resume when you think of it all together. This is one of the best group of 5 teams in the country that's really not been getting a whole lot of love. You hear the talk about Tulane, Liberty, JMU, schools like that. I think Toledo deserves the respect of being one of the best group of 5 teams. They're fun to watch. They're exciting to watch during action. And now they get to be on the national stage here on Saturday. I like what this team can do. I think they have a fantastic offense and an incredible defense that's very underrated. I like them to cover this spread this week. This is a very exciting matchup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them in the bowl games, bowl season, where they could really get a good matchup against another group of 5 team or a Power 5 team, potentially beat those teams.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Appreciate you joining me, Nick. This one will be going down at the same exact time as the Big 12 title game, but make sure your TVs are on ESPN, not just ABC, because this one, again, should be a pretty solid one, especially for the people who got some money on it.
Very underrated game. Super excited for it.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
She make it clap.